My name is Sam Spurgle. I am the Chief Community Programs and Services Officer at IHCDA. That is a very long title, which just means I get to do really cool stuff. I get to oversee our community services team. For those of that team that are in the room, just a huge thank you for everything that you've done today. And if I haven't gotten to meet you, I'm really excited to be here and to attend my first development day. Admittedly, I worked at IHCDA for 10 years on our real estate side, and it's just been such a privilege to get to see the great work that you all do. So I am going to open this up. There's a reason they don't let me speak in public. I'm going to tell a dad joke because it's right after one. The other good thing about being in this room is they left us with all the food. So please feel free to get up if you need to. But I'm going to start with the dad jokes because we've hit the afternoon lull and you're in a meeting about compliance. So what would bears be without bees? Ears. Oh. I literally Googled dad jokes. This is why I know a lot of sense of humor. What did the horse say after it tripped? Help, I've fallen and I can't giddy up. Also, trying to find ones that are safe for work is a little bit tricky, so this is fun. I'll end with this one. How do you make an egg roll? Push it. And at that note, welcome to Spring Development Day 2026. Very excited to have you here. This is the session, What If? Agency level presentation about unique occurrences. So this is, we're going to go over some common but really complicated critical things that we as grant administrators want to work with you all on to ensure full compliance with our federal funding. We have two really great representatives from IHCDA. So the first is Brianna Bender. She is the director of our program integrity team. And the second is Mark Lippy, one of our fantastic attorneys who assists us in a lot of the complicated matters that come to IHCDA. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Mark to talk about our first what if. Oh, and I do know how to do things. Really quickly, so these are the things we're going to talk about. The first, I don't have a slide on this, but tell us often, tell us early. If you come across something that doesn't pass what I'm going to call the sniff test, please feel free to reach out to IHCDA. And then we're going to give you some legal advice and confidential information, go over subpoenas, what to do if you bought a car, A133 required financial reporting, and what if you ask us. I will say that this is a safe space with an asterisk, but we do want to hear from you. And if you're dealing with something that's complicated, let us know. We will help you problem solve because our goal is to not be punitive. It is to try to figure out how can we move you all from A to B, protect the individuals that you are housing, and ensure that we don't lose any federal funds. So with that, I'll kick it over to Mark.
All right. Thank you, Sam, for that stellar introduction. I'm Mark Lippy. I'm a real estate attorney with the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. I'm going to be talking about confidentiality and subpoenas with you all today. I'm going to try to keep this brief because I know Ray has quite a bit to talk about. And I think there is a period after my discussion for questions if you want to ask in front of the group, but also be sticking around afterwards in case you have any questions that maybe you want to bring up in front of other people and questions in these topics may not be best for public consumption. So anyway, there was a mistake on the first slide. It said that I'm going to provide you all with legal advice. That is not the case. This is not legal advice. I can only provide legal advice in IHCDA. What I'm going to provide today is some general advice regarding confidentiality and subpoenas, and to try to help you guide some of those. If you do need legal advice, please seek the advice of an independent counsel. I'm probably going to say that a few times today. IHCDA does provide guidelines and requirements intended to protect personally identifiable information or PII, but not legal. All right, confidential information generally. Here are the provisions from IHCDA's subrecipient agreements and contracts dealing with confidentiality. These are quoted word for word. One of the things to highlight here are the two chapters of the Indiana Code, right here and right here. Those two chapters deal with disclosure of social security numbers and notification procedures if a social security number is disclosed. As I'm sure you're all aware, we're supposed to keep social security numbers secret. Accidents happen, things happen. If your organization or somebody in it discloses their social security number, please let IHCDA know right away. We may have to notify the Office of the Attorney General, do some other procedures to try and make sure that to limit the damage done to whoever's social security number was disclosed. Right, then there are also COC specific confidentiality requirements, like all records containing protected identifying information of any individual or family that receives assistance have to be kept secure and confidential. The address or location of any family violence project assisted with continuum care funds cannot be made public. The address or location of any housing or program participant will not be made public. And the important thing here is that your organization has to adopt written procedures for following these. There's a chance that IHCDA could ask to see them or could ask to see them. So it's important that you have written procedures that adhere to these bullet points. These are straight out of IHCDA's administration manual, and that manual takes them straight out of 24 CFR 578B. So they're HUD requirements. All right, then there are also HMIS specific confidentiality requirements. Your organizations, if you deal with HMIS data, have to follow the requirements of IHCDA's agency participation agreement, the HMIS user agreement, notice of privacy practices and statement of privacy practices, and the HMIS standard operating procedure. You also have to follow HUD's HMIS data and technical standards final notice, which I think is from 2004. All of these should be available on IHCDA's website. If you can't find them for some reason, feel free to reach out to your contact with IHCDA or Balance the State Continuum of Care, and that person should be able to provide them for you. All right, subpoenas. You've got mail. It's a subpoena. Right? Thank you. Thank you, Skylar. Right. What exactly is a subpoena? Here's the definition from the Indiana Code, the title on civil law. But basically, a subpoena is a court authorized request for information. Some subpoenas can require in-person appearance, like a deposition, or you to show up and you can also have to bring documents with you. A lot of times they just want the documents, and then maybe the last question if they have them later. So a lot of times you'll get a subpoena, maybe it says like you are commanded to appear, blah, 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 and bring these documents with you. If you talk to the issuer of the subpoena, a lot of times they'll say, we don't really want you to appear, just give us the documents we're asking for. There are civil subpoenas and law enforcement subpoenas. Civil subpoenas are maybe you'll get one from like a divorce or something. Some attorney in a divorce case is trying to ask about records of probably the opposing party. And then there are law enforcement subpoenas where you get from the FBI or a local law enforcement agency doing an investigation into a particular person. There's some differences with how you treat these subpoenas. A lot of times you can fight civil subpoenas a little bit more. Law enforcement subpoenas, you're gonna usually have to follow a little bit more. You can take some steps to verify the authenticity of subpoenas. If you get a civil subpoena, there should be a case number on the top and a caption that you could look up on My Case if you're familiar with that. And at least make sure that there is a case out there that exists that corresponds to that number. If you get a law enforcement subpoena, or both of them really, once you get your ducks in a row and consulted an attorney, if you're going to do that, you can call whoever issued the subpoena. Their contact information will generally be on the subpoena, and kind of ask and just make sure that it is real and it is from where they say it is, so you're not just handing over information to some bad actor. They can also come from different courts and agencies. You could have a subpoena issued from a case in federal court, a case in state court. You could get subpoenas from various federal agencies or state agencies like the Office of the Attorney General or HUD, CFPB. If I get them from them. And you should always seek the advice of independent legal counsel when you get a subpoena. I have to say that it really comes down to how useful a lawyer may be. If you get a subpoena and it looks like there's a lot of risk to your organization, then the lawyer is going to be much more useful. If you get a subpoena and like when you're looking through the records to respond to that subpoena, you find your organization's broken the law or broken some rule of IHCDA, it's going to be a really good idea to engage an attorney. If the subpoena is only requesting like public information or something, or there's a very low risk, the usefulness of engaging an attorney is going to be lower in those cases. Attorneys can also be helpful in assessing the risk. So like I said, if there's a risk of liability to your agency, you're going to want to have an attorney. Attorneys can help you assess that risk. But if you're unsure, it's always a good idea to ask an attorney. I know some of you have attorneys on your boards that are helpful. If you're able to run subpoenas by them, that's probably a good idea. They can assist with that. This is an example of a subpoena. This is a civil subpoena, and it is kind of an example that you would get out of state court. This one's requesting some information, I think, about the ERA program at one point. One interesting thing about this particular subpoena is that, like, one objection an attorney could lodge is you're supposed to put in a subpoena, a state court civil subpoena, that the recipient of it's entitled to security and bonding, and they didn't, like, there's a magic sentence from the trial rule you're supposed to include, and I don't think they included it here. So that's one objection an attorney that you can hire to lodge if you didn't want to respond to this for some reason. Also, here's an example. This is a grand jury subpoena. This is, like I said earlier, I believe it says you're commanded to appear before, but I don't think I've ever had to appear in front of a grand jury. I've always just given documents, but documents. Every now and then I've had to talk with the person that sends it. Like, they'll have some questions about the documents, or maybe wonder like, hey, why is this missing? I can explain that to them. But they generally don't have to appear. If you ever have to appear, then you almost definitely want to have an attorney if you're going to be getting questioned in a deposition or something. All right, one information. If somebody informally calls your organization or asks for some information, it's always a good idea to ask them to get a subpoena. Even if it's a law enforcement officer, they might be a little annoyed, but it's a good idea to have the record of the subpoena. It kind of protects your organization, like, hey, we had to follow this, rather than just somebody on the phone. And it helps ensure that proper procedures can be followed if you have procedures for responding to a subpoena. The PII can and only should be provided to the extent necessary to accomplish the purpose of the requested information. So you're gonna have to be careful with getting that PII. All right, HMI, that's the data request. IHCDA owns the data in the HMIS and is responsible for its safekeeping. If there's ever a request for information from the HMI database, please notify IHCDA. And IHCDA will work with your agency to determine what may be disclosed. And yeah, for HMIS, it's particularly important not to disclose information except to the extent needed by the requesting entity. That's it for me. Are there any questions? Like I said, I'll stick around afterwards for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. Well, thank you all very much. And next up is Rihanna Bender.
love that he jumps down and make it look easy and stop the stair rail with both hands because I have to. So that is my worst nightmare, is falling on my face in front of a group of strangers while wearing shoes. So we're going to talk about car titles. Lots of federal pass-through funds can be used to purchase vehicles, and in many instances, they do count as equipment. So what if cars and equipment purchased, donated, or sold? So first, we'll consider buying a vehicle. Equipment is defined as tangible personal property having a useful life of more than 1 year per unit cost of $10,000. That will easily equate to most vehicles you could buy even on the used market. Is that better? Yes, okay. You can always give me a thumbs up or thumbs down or just yell. That's always worse. I also usually pace when I talk, so being stuck behind this podium is kind of freaking me out a little. But anyway, so most vehicles that you could purchase will be well over that $10,000 threshold. So under 2 CFR 200-313, they are going to count as equipment. So that is the section that's going to govern your purchase. And when you do make a purchase, you will need prior written approval, and that can be from the pass-through entity, IHCDA, or from the federal entity. I know that there are concerns with our pace in responding sometimes, but I promise you we do respond faster than the feds. But you do have the option to ask either entity, and that is 100% your choice. So purchases must follow procurement standards, including obtaining quotes for purchases above the micro threshold limit. And just in case you're a little concerned, that limit has changed substantially in the last couple of years. It moved up to $10,000 October 1st of 2024, and then up to $15,000 after October 1st of 2025. And again, IHCDA or the federal agency, again, it's your choice, must be listed as a lien holder on your title. That is a requirement, even if the vehicle is paid in full. So I know it's a little odd to consider having a vehicle that's paid in full that still has a lien on title, but that lien is required by the federal regulations, and those federal regulations, of course, are incorporated into all of our agency and subrecipient agreements. So when you're acquiring a newer used vehicle with federal grant funds with IHCDA as the pass-through entity, again, we must be listed as a lien holder unless you choose to list the federal entity. And again, that is 100% your choice. The subrecipient, your agency, should be listed as the owner. Please do not list us as the owner. Please do not list the federal agency as the owner. It is much easier for us to release the lien, and we'll talk about how we do that later on and when we need to do that. All original titles must be mailed to the IHCDA Department of Program Integrity, care of Michelle Bowling. Trust me, your titles are in good hands. She used to be the fleet manager for the state of Indiana, so she is an expert in all things vehicle title related. Please mail them with tracking. These are title documents. It's not free to replace them. It's between $15 and $25. However, you do have to fill out some forms to replace them, and you are kind of at the mercy of the DMV to wait for those new title docs. So please, when you mail them in, mail them with tracking, whether that's certified mail, overnight, your choice. IHCDA or the federal agency, again, should be listed as a lien holder, even if the vehicle is purchased outright. And IHCDA is currently engaged in a project to clean up all of our vehicle titles. So you may have gotten questions from Michelle Bowling concerning vehicles that you may no longer have. Again, we're just trying to clean up our title records, so it's not anything you may have done or anything you've done incorrectly. We're just trying to make sure we have accurate information on our end to move forward for everyone. So if you get those inquiries from Jonathan Adriani or JJ or Michelle Bowling, please answer those as quickly as you're able. And again, it's just for our informational purposes. And then we'll talk about donated vehicles quickly. The value of a property or an in-kind donation may not be charged to the federal award as a direct or indirect cost. However, the value of the donated vehicle may be used as cost sharing or matching if it meets the listed requirements. Those include necessary and reasonable to accomplish your project goals, verifiable with the organization's records, and cannot be used as cost sharing for any other federal award. And we will discuss in just a minute, you do have an option whether you want to claim depreciation on the asset or use cost sharing or matching. Again, that's a choice that you can make at your agency level. So the value of the vehicle claimed for cost sharing purposes must not exceed the fair market value. And in a couple of slides, we'll talk about a couple quick and free ways to determine that fair market value. And the value must be determined in accordance with your recipient's standard accounting practices. And the value must be documented and supported. And again, we'll talk about some free ways to make that happen. Title to the vehicle is held by the recipient. IHCDA nor the feds provided any funds, so there's no lien to be had for IHCDA or the federal agency. You would hold title outright on the donated item. And if the vehicle is not used for cost sharing, again, you can charge depreciation on the donated vehicle. But again, that's a choice. You can't use it for match and claim depreciation. You've got to pick at your agency level which way you'd like to proceed. So kind of a donation checklist there. Verify that it is in fact a donation, that they're not looking for sale costs or for you to pay title transfer fees or anything like that, that it is a true donation. Document the fair market value. Decide if you'd like to use the vehicle for match or depreciation. Record the vehicle in your asset management system, whatever system that may be. And again, follow the guidelines for 2 CFR 200-313 for final disposition. And we'll talk about that in just a few seconds. So disposing of the vehicle. When equipment is no longer needed for the original program or project or other activities supported by the federal agency that provided the funds, and, because there's always an and, the value of the equipment or vehicle is less than $10,000. When the current fair market value is less than $10,000, you folks have a lot of choices as far as how you handle that. And again, the valuation must be based on fair market value. And again, we'll talk about that in just a second. But you may sell the vehicle, you may retain the vehicle, you may scrap the vehicle, you may dispose of the vehicle, you may donate the vehicle. And if the asset is under $10,000, that choice is 100% yours, how you would like to handle that situation. But again, please advise IHCDA. If it was something that was purchased outright that does have an IHCDA lien and you were choosing to donate it or sell it, we absolutely want to release our lien. We don't want the Smith household driving around their vehicle with an IHCDA lien. We want to make sure that you guys are conveying clear title and that they are receiving clear title, if that is your choice. When the value of the vehicle or equipment is over $10,000, unfortunately, those choices become a little more limited. So if you decided that you no longer have a use for a vehicle, it no longer meets your program requirements, you are ready to move on from that vehicle, but the value is over $10,000. Again, you need to inform IHCDA that you're going to move on from the vehicle, and the following must be documented before disposition is approved. And that's the nature of the disposition, whether you want to have a public sale, trade in, or transfer the title. What the fair market value is, process for determining the nature of disposition and fair market value. So how you at an agency level decided what you wanted to do and how you were going to do it. And then we'll discuss release of lien and then finally a signature from the ED of the subrecipient. Some folks just choose to have the ED send that email notifying us that you're going to move on from the vehicle to Jonathan as a way to meet that last requirement, and that's fairly simple. So when the fair market value is in excess of $10,000, again, you've got some choices. However, the federal government is entitled to the percentage of the funds it contributed to that vehicle. So if pass-through funds paid 100% of the purchase price of that vehicle, even if you purchased it at $60,000 and that vehicle is now worth $20,000, that $20,000 is all owed back to the feds, except for $1,000 that you may retain for the cost of sale. So those funds do flow back to the federal organization that provided the funds. Now, in the example on the slide, the example shows the federal government kicking in less than 100% of the purchase price. You may have used another source of funds for the remainder of the purchase. You may have used the other source of funds as match, but it presumes in this instance that the current fair market value of the vehicle you wish to move on from is $20,000, that the federal funds originally contributed were 85% of the purchase price. So that would entitle the federal government to $17,000 or 85% of that fair market value for that vehicle. So in that case, you would be able to retain a larger percentage of the funding, which may absolutely impact your decision of how you want to sell or move on from that vehicle. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? Yes, absolutely. Title may be transferred back to the federal agency or an eligible third party. Again, IHCDA does need to be notified. If the recipient fails to take proper action in disposing of the vehicle, the federal agency or IHCDA as a pass-through may direct the disposition. And recipient must request instructions approval from IHCDA. Again, if you don't want to do that, we want you to make that choice what's best for your agency at the local level. So just give us a heads up that you're ready to move on from the vehicle, and JJ or Michelle will help you get that document in order to get everything approved and handle that the way you'd like to. And included in the federal award terms, there is also an option to retain equipment with no further federal obligation, but it has to be specifically included in your award terms, and it has to be signed off at a federal level. So where to find that fair market value for free? So fair market value is basically the current value of a vehicle or asset So you can get that Kelly Blue Book, Edmunds, or Carfax. To start that process, you would need the VIN, license plate, or just make and model. If you don't have those items, that's okay. But please try your very best to be honest in the assessment of the vehicle, because it's regardless of what site you select, they're going to ask you questions about the condition of the vehicle. Is it in good condition? Is it in good use condition? Is it in poor condition? So the more honest you are in your responses, the more accurate valuation you're going to receive. And when being under that $10,000 threshold provides you folks at a local level a lot of freedom to dispose of that vehicle, the more accurate you are in the valuation, the more closer you may be to meeting that threshold. Does that make sense to everybody? So once you have your VIN, license plate, or make and model, and I did all three with my car, I got the same valuation anyway I did it. You will also need the specific mileage, some general information about the features of the vehicle, and the vehicle condition. The more information you have about the features and the vehicle condition, the more accurate your valuation is going to be. So all three sites provide free valuations. All three sites allow you to print out your valuations. I would encourage you, if you're dissatisfied with the valuation, check the other two sites. Sometimes there are differences on input data. Sometimes there are up to the minute differences on sales data as well. And again, if you are just generally across the board unhappy with the valuation, you don't think it's accurate, you don't think it's correct, it's too high, you may elect a third-party appraisal. And again, if the valuation does end up being over $10,000, that is part of the $1,000 that you can have returned to you. Questions on buying, receiving a donated, or selling a vehicle? All right, seeing none, I will turn it over to Sam Sparkle. Do you like to stand or hold?
That's for the record. All right, who's excited to talk about single audits? My favorite topic of all time. We just got done with our single audit, so I get it. Believe me, it's a gift that keeps on giving. All right, so A133 single audit or IRS Form 990. So the regulations for this are under 2 CFR 200.74. IHCDA, as Ray stated earlier, meets the definition of a pass-through entity. So those that receive federal funds from IHCDA are required to meet certain reporting obligations through financial reporting yearly. And this was updated last year, 2 years ago. So any non-federal entity that expends more than $1 million, it used to be $750,000 in federal funds during the entity's fiscal year is required to have a single audit completed that year. So it's important to note on this that that $1 million in federal funds does not have to be singularly from IHCDA, does not have to be necessarily from one program. You might receive funding from HUD directly or from another federal agency. You might receive funds from other agencies. If you do have more than $1 million for any federal funding, this regulation is triggered. Any non-federal entity that spends less than $1 million is still required to submit IRS Form 990. I will say the most stressful moment, or one of the more stressful moments of my career, was when we had a nonprofit that had not submitted 990s for several years and lost their nonprofit status. It's really, really critical that you all ensure that you have good internal controls and good systems in place to ensure that you are submitting those forms to the IRS. There comes a point where IHCDA can only help get you so far. And at some point, the federal government does take over and make decisions that can have a severe impact in your delivery of services. IHCDA reviews your audit report to determine if it has findings that may impact your funds. All right, so IHCDA has some policies around the submission of the single audit. So financial reports are due 30 days after their stated report or within 9 months after the end of the entity's fiscal year, whichever is earliest. So we do have an internal auditor, Sophia Chen, who many of you may have worked with before. She receives a full list of the awards from each department, and she determines who is required to submit this documentation. She is sending a reminder email to each party concerning their reporting obligation. That being said, and to quote Mark, Sophia cannot give you legal advice. She cannot let you know if you are required If your agency is required to do a single auditor 990, it's really important, again, that you meet with an attorney or a tax specialist to walk your agency through what your federal obligation is. In the case that we do not know if an entity receives other federal funds, we will ask for that single audit. And Sophia may provide and this is sort of a new internal policy that Sophia, we have had several submissions of single audits that have come in late. And so Sophia, in her role as our director of internal audit, is only authorized to give an additional 60 days extension to any entity that has not submitted their single audit to IHCDA. After that 60 days, IHCDA's executive team will meet. We may set up a meeting with you to understand the circumstances as to why that single audit has not been submitted. On a case-by-case basis, we can allow for an additional extension. But the onus is really on you all as a subrecipient to explain to us why it is that audit is 2 months or more late. So we do ask if you need an extension request to have those submitted before the due date and say why. Anything after that, again, will need approval from the executive team. I have been able myself to work with some of our nonprofit partners that have had extenuating circumstances as to whether their audit is late and to grant additional extensions. Again, we're not here to penalize. We really just want to get the information so we can continue to fund you. But we want to make sure that we are moving forward and we are getting the information that we have. So when we are audited by our auditors, that we can say definitively, yes, this organization is doing what they need to do. Yes, they have met all of the regulations, not just under the federal award that they receive, but also under 2 CFR 200. Certainly, if you do have any questions, we do have an A133 inbox. If you have any questions about past reporting, if you have any questions regarding the reporting deadline, if you need an extension, always start with Sophia. She will immediately loop in the executive and all the program staff to have a better understanding of what's happening. And then again, we want to hear from you. What is causing that delay so we can work with you to come to a positive resolution. And then also reach out if you think you might be missing prior years. We know that there is staff turnover constantly, and we have it for ourselves. And so we certainly worked with some new executive directors and new CFOs that are trying to piece together lots of puzzle pieces and trying to figure out why certain files might be missing. We are more than happy to help you navigate a lot of that. And before I get to questions, I also just want to say, if you do have any questions on anything that we've talked about today, always feel free to reach out to any member of the community services team, to myself, and most importantly, to our program integrity team. So we do actually have a website that if you are concerned about waste, fraud, or abuse, which by the way is very difficult for me to say, because I tend to put waste and fraud into one word, and that's not what it says. We do, we have an ability for you as an individual or as an agency to file, whether formally or informally, a concern, a complaint, an observation with us. It can be done anonymously as well, and that allows us to go in and look to see, is there a problem, is there not a problem? And that team is very well versed in pulling together program staff as necessary and doing an investigation if it calls for it to ensure, again, that our federal funds are being used properly. So we don't have to return funds. Because if we have to return funds, that's another feeling we don't get to serve. And that's really not what we want to do. So and I'm not an attorney, so I can give you legal advice, but I would not follow it. But I do have a lot of systems in place to help provide safeguards, but also to help you all navigate the murkiness that is the federal government regulations. So any questions? We will end on a dad joke. Maybe. Oh, I did bring my phone up here.
I do have questions. If we have additional questions about the car situation, we'll reach out to Rayanna.
Yes.
Rayanna, okay.
Yep, great question. Jen?
I was gonna ask earlier, with the attorney.
Mark?
So not about,
Yeah, it's your turn.
yes, not about your stuff. Sorry, but I forgot to ask earlier. I didn't forget. I just had some questions about like AI and how documents are produced, inauthentic versus authentic documents. Are you guys seeing a trend towards anything like that with AI documentation. That's it.
I'll let Ray take that one.
Do you want to take that, Mark? Or will you take it?
Yeah, I can talk about it.
It's a great question. We do have a new policy.
So we have, I've been seeing in court, lots of people filing, like pro se people filing on their own behalf, ChatGPT generated filings. They're kind of impressive, like, they look pretty good, like, if people, so there's that. If we use AI in our workplace, we're supposed to, our policy has us, like, we're supposed to market, like, disclose that we used AI to help with us here, in this. From a legal standpoint, they tell us repeatedly as lawyers not to ever put like, confidential information into the LLMs like ChatGPT and stuff. Like, and you guys probably shouldn't either be putting in PII, or any of that stuff into ChatGPT or those like similar, software. Like, it can be really helpful for like helping get you started, but yeah, don't put confidential information or PII in there. Is that going to answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything with that?
No, I just, you can use PIA or, can use AI. We've done it internally, particularly for presentations that we're giving. But again, just take a step back and try to ensure that you aren't putting in any information as Mark stated that might be protected, that might be confidential. And then again, to disclose if you are using AI and documentation.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to add that the reason that you don't put PII in there is because they use whatever information is in there to continue learning and developing the models. So like, once you put it in, whatever information you put in as a prompt to ChatGPT, you kind of lose control over it. So that's why you don't put in your PII or confidential information.
Yeah, please.
Chairs up there. You guys could
Just skip stairs altogether. To the extent the question regarding what you can do with AI as far as creating documentation that may in fact not be authentic, IHCDA is 100% seeing that. We have seen that since, basically since the RAF program. If you're not familiar, there are sites like Etsy that sell writable PDF documentation, writable Chase bank statements, writable mortgage underwriting, writable 1099s, writable W-2s. All of that is available. If you believe you have encountered inauthentic documentation, the program integrity team does have some resources that can help you verify information. If you have two people using the same social, we can assist you in verifying which individual that social authentically belongs to. We also have a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Revenue for fraud prevention. So we can determine what year the individual last filed taxes. If somebody is telling you they haven't filed for several years, we can confirm the truth of that statement. If somebody is telling you that their household size has changed, we can check the last filing for number of dependents. I do want to be very clear, we did not receive a copy of their state tax return. There is certain information that they are allowed to provide to us through our memo of understanding. And most recently, for all of our side hustle or side gig economy folks, we do have the ability now to determine how many vendors an individual was working for in a taxable year. So if someone is related to you, oh, I only drive for DoorDash, but you believe that they're also driving for Uber and Lyft, or that they're delivering on the side for Amazon, we can check with DOR the number of independent jobs that they claimed. They will tell us yes or no that they did have a side gig, and they will give us the number of documents that were filed. So we can tell you if you only received one that, hey, the Department of Revenue says there are 3. So you may want to go back to your household and ask for additional information. Thank you, folks.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, hopefully you all are still awake. You're doing great. I'm really proud of you. All right, as promised, I'll do one more. We're gonna go with a bang. It's the most Indiana one I've seen. What does a form say when it gets a compliment?
Oh, shut.
Ah, shucks. We heard that. With that, I really hope you all took away something here. Again, I think if you can see, there's a lot of federal regulations that impact everything that we do. If you have questions on anything, let us know. We are nerds and we geek out on all of this stuff. We're happy to help and navigate all of this and help support you in everything that you do. So thank you all very much.